All right, welcome back. Let's put some stuff into this app that's actually like movie quote specific. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by looking at the model object. So like how's this data stored? So things usually start with data. Let's start just kind of by jumping back to looking at this app. I'll jump back to the first slide here. So we're displaying a list of movie quotes, and so what I want to do is I want to talk about what goes into a movie quote. So it's pretty obvious. There's two things right here, right? So there is the quote itself, which we're going to cleverly just call internally the quote, and then there's what movie did it come from. So we're going to call that one a movie. Now the types of these two, those are both strings, right? So we're going to have to save a string for the quote in the movie. So you know that at least there's those two. And there's actually one more thing we have to save if you think about it. And that's these always show up in order, right? So like the order is always newest to oldest on here. And so we're going to have to save one more thing, and that's when it was created. So when it's created, we're going to call that the last touch date time. I had to pause it there because it took me too long to write. So last touch date time is what's going to store the order. The reason I choose to call it a date time is because that's the name of the object type in Python, right? So they call them date times because it actually keeps it to like the microsecond, which is more than we need. But it should be plenty to store when these things are last been modified. That is a good point. You can actually keep it in terms of when they were created or when they were last modified. We're gonna put them in order of when they were last modified from newest to oldest. All right, so we've got these three attributes that we're going to need to add to our web app. So let's go ahead and fire up Eclipse again. So here we go. So we're in here. Things are working good. We were able to say, from Dave Fisher. Oh, by the way, I got my bug fixed. I can now use Eclipse again. So I can just right click and I can say upload from here. Looks like it fell off the screen. But now I can upload from Eclipse and I don't even need Google App Engine Launcher. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new file. We're going to call it models.py. So you can say new file. You can also say PyDev module, but there's really no advantage. So I'm just going to say new file. And I'm going to say models.py. And so models.py, since I chose new file, it just made it blank. It's going to have a class in here. This class is going to be called the MovieQuote. The way these classes work is we're going to store them in the data store. The data store uses NDB, and so the superclass is going to be NDB model. If you're familiar with Python, what you put in parentheses there is just the superclass. And it says, hey, I don't know what NDB is. You can see the underline. If your setup is good, you can actually hit like, I think it's Control-Shift-O and import it. And no, that didn't work at all. Oh, yeah, there it is. And it'll actually type the import for you. If your Eclipse setup, for some reason Eclipse is unhappy, you would actually just have to type that line. I think it's funny. Eclipse in Java is like perfect. If you hit Control-Shift-O in Java, it's going to alphabetize and organize your imports. Everything is rosy. Python, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it should. That's the type of class, and it's going to need three things. It's going to need a quote, which is a string. The way you do this is you say ndb.stringProperty. And this is technically a constructor, and this string property constructor, there are some properties that you could set on it, like you could set defaults, and you could put like a default title in there if you wanted. We won't go into the details on that, and we don't need any on this one, so I'm just going to say that there's a string property for quote. Hopefully you could do movie by yourself, so string property. And then this last one, to keep track of the order, is a last touch date time. And this one is a different type of property. It is a date time property. And there is stuff we want to put into its constructor. The reason there is stuff we want to put in there is because App Engine has this magic feature where it will just track the last time it was modified for you if you tell the constructor to do it. I'm pretty sure that it's auto now true, but I'm going to go look it up in the notes. So there's auto now true, which will take the last time it was modified and automatically update it. And there's also auto now add, which would be just when it was added. So that was the one type there. Let's go back and look at the slides. There were some other things I wanted to talk about anyway. So we've created this movie quote. It looks like in the slides I did a better job of adding a doc string which says what this class is for. What the heck, you can do that. So I chose to say model object used to store movie quotes in the data store. I'm sure I said something slightly different in the slides, but that's all right. And that's just a good reference for if other people come looking at your code. When it comes to the different type of properties that you can have on your model object, it is a little bit limiting, but there are ways you can use them in clever ways. So there's an integer property. App Engine made the choice a long time ago not to mess with char, ints, and long. They just said there will be one integer type. It's called integer property. It's 64 bits. There are no other integers. That's the integer. Same with float. They just said, hey, it's a double precision. There's one variable type called float. We're not messing with floats and doubles. Boolean properties, that one's obvious. String property, that's what we're using here. Text property is like if you want to store a book, you don't want it to be searchable like a short string. So there's actually two. There's string and there's text. We're going to be using strings. Ours are well under 500. And then the last one we're using today is this date time property. So we added those two strings, and we added the last touch date time. You can see there's some notes in here about the auto now versus auto now true. And that's actually it for this time. I know it's not very exciting to do something and not run it, but we prepared the model object for later use. All right, that's it for the model. I'll see you next time.